Sonictalk.
Well, hello and welcome to Sonictalk, episode 782, recorded today on Wednesday, what is the date? It's the 5th, isn't it? Is it the 6th? No, it's the 6th. The 6th of December. Electronic music podcast. We talk about all things to do with music technology, whether it be synthesizers, software, drum machines, production, music production, live production, all kinds of stuff. And this show is dedicated to my friend Rog, who sadly passed away quite recently. But, you know, it's a year for that sort of thing. Anyway, I just wanted to put a little tribute in there. So there's a marker. Sometimes we can all disappear without much of that. So, yeah. Anyway, bit of housekeeping. Want to say thank you very much to Wagyu in the chat. I think he's back. I haven't seen his name yet, but he's will be looking after all the people who he'll be moderating as he does for so many shows. Very much appreciated. We should all club together and buy him an amazing present for Christmas, I think. But he does a great job. And also works on a little bit of the code behind the scenes to make all of this chat talk to itself, so we get a big conglomeration. So thanks, Wagyu. Much appreciated. Also want to say, hey, you know, join our Patreon, which I will press the button for now, and I've got a new ad. Why not consider joining us on Patreon? Even at the basic level, you'll get all our content ad-free, excluding show videos, of course. You'll also get access to the Sonictalk pre-show and a few exclusive videos. In fact, we just posted the Game Changer Audio Motor Synth Mark II Extended Director's Cut, which has an extra 7 minutes of content. But if you join at the upper level, not only will you get that, you'll get exclusive video. In fact, I think we posted an Osmo's Friday Fun extra bits. There's also extended playing for the Super Gemini video we recently posted, sample sets, and don't forget you also at both layers get onto our Discord. So why not consider joining us in this time when ads are a bit harder to come by? It just helps us keep doing what we're doing. Thanks very much for watching. Yes, back to the show. That's a new one. That was weird. There was a frame of me on the end. I must have recorded it here. Anyway, let's get on to our guests, because we've got a fulsome panel, as I want to say. I think the word fulsome actually generates a drink, doesn't it, in the Sonictalk bingo? So if you're that way inclined, take a drink. I said it. Matt Hodson, how are you doing? Maths, a.k.a. Maths. I think you might be muted, but I'm not sure.
Hello?
Let's check and see.
No.
Oh, no, you're not. You're all right. Matt,
here.
of course, a.k.a. Maths, in his his studio, which is getting visually more impressive every day. So I like the lights there, yeah. So, and those are your new modular cases. Nice. How you doing, Matt?
I'm all right. Yeah, they're still working this. So I did a pretty good job. I'm all right. I've been very, very busy. So so I haven't been around for a few weeks. So it's good to be. Always great to be on the podcast. Thanks. Main thing really has been just, you know, what it's like in the music industry. You're always kind of working in the future and planning, and very much so for NAMM. So as you know, I'm working with Stylophone, working for Stylophone now, and we're going to be at NAMM. So we're just getting prepared for all of that. It'd be lovely to see anyone who's going to be there. Come and say hello at the booth. I'll be there for the whole time, and we'll be showing off some things which I can't talk about.
You'll be on you'll be on the. So you'll be on the other side. You're sort of seeing how it works from this side of the fence. Interesting. So you should have fun.
Really looking forward to it. The thing about going to these places as well, you always see the same sort of faces from all walks of life, whether they're punters or people who work in the industry and stuff like that. I always love going to those things, and it's great meeting new people as well. So do come and say hi if you're there. Other than that, been working on music, and
good.
Yes, and there'll be more of that which I can talk about in the new year, which I'm really excited about as well. But it's good to see you all.
Excellent. Well, lovely to have you back, as I said. So I've also got Robbie Puricelli, who at Failed Muso, who's there in his very blue room. It's just a blue phase you're going through. Is it reflected in the music you're making as well? Is everything pentatonic, or are you just... No, okay.
I wish I had time to make music. Yeah, you'd think. No, apparently it makes me pop a little better on screen, with all the lighting. I'm not into all the technicalities of it all, but hey, thank you for having me. I've been busy as hell with podcast editing and ProSynth Network and all of that kind of stuff. There's a new Sound on Sound podcast coming out in 2 weeks, which I'm so happy with and excited for, because it was a real busman's holiday for me. That literally just went out to get mastered yesterday, so I'm just waiting for that back. But yes, it's all fun and games.
I must confess, you haven't wired up your on-air sign. I mean, I can see it back there, but it's not lit up. I mean, what's going on there? Call yourself a pro?
I know. Lots of people think that the pro in ProSynth Network stands for professional. Oh, how wrong they are.
Excellent. Well, lovely to have you, Robbie, of course, as ever, and very much. And also we have Paulee, who's there in their studio, a magical synth adventure, but also Vogue Renegade. And I have to say, before we go anywhere else, you've just released a track called Failure on Vogue Renegade, and honestly, I think it's really, really good. It's a work of genius, if you don't mind me saying so. I think the mix and the arrangement.
I'm not going to argue.
The arrangement is brilliant. It's really good, and I encourage everybody to listen to it, because it's quite challenging in terms of the dynamics and excitement, but it really works for the material. It's sort of like, wow, it makes you lean back. Oh, I seem to have lost my light. I'll fix that now. But yeah,
all
welcome.
The excitement made the electricity go out.
It's because I turned my on-air sign on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Wiped out the electric.
And the whole country's
and yours is on. Mine switched off.
For all our American and European viewers, Britain is now so poor that we're just all sharing one plug socket.
We're sharing the light bulb, yeah.
Anyway,
actually,
I'm mostly joking there. Don't take that too seriously. But yeah, thanks for having me on. It's my entry into this year's Amiga art contest, where we use old computers to do cool stuff. And can
I play a bit? Will it trigger a YouTube copyright? No, well, it's not always you that does that. It's a robot, but you've gone for the sort of 4/3 old school. I'm just going to play a bit of it, because honestly, I think it's fantastic. I'm going to go to the chorus because it's...
Yeah.
That gets you the outcome. That gets you the break. It's chaos and stardom. That gives you your place. You should be careful.
Right, I'm going to leave it as a tease, because
it's a bit drum
honestly,
and bassy.
Yeah, it's sort of. I mean, but yeah, wow, there's loads of energy in that. I think it's great. Anyway,
John
congratulations.
Fox meets Pendulum kind of vibes.
yeah. That's a pretty good description, but with a kind of rootsy folk middle eight or pre-ending, which I thought was lovely with the vocals. Sounds like sort of witches dancing in the misty forest to a drum.
Well, I actually got witches, so there we go. That's why it sounds like witches. They are actually witches.
Fantastic.
The good witches, they're not evil ones, but at the same time, don't cross them. Because you never know.
No, fair enough. I'm glad I liked it and didn't say anything bad then. Maybe my hair would fall out or something terrible. I don't know. Anyway, lovely to have you all. Thank you very much. We do have some things to actually talk about. It's not just sort of shooting the breeze. You'll be pleased to know, as listeners, or perhaps that's how you prefer it. But anyway, that's what you've got, so there's not much you can do about it at the moment. Anyway, so yeah, we've got some topics. I mean, I suppose let's go to the first one, because this is, I guess it's news. It's a new product from Moog, right? Although we don't get to see much of it for a while. I'm glad to see that even after the acquisition, Moog haven't lost their sort of obtuse product video approach, which is good. It's encouraging, isn't it?
Song. In the hands of the musician, bass becomes an extension of self.
Okay, come on, get on with it. I think they say, here we go.
Modern
It's the Moog Mariana, which is a plugin, right? And so far, people are getting quite excited about it. I know Robin Vincent did a review of it and thought it sounded great. Synth Anatomy did a review of it and said, "Wow, this is really good." And we know that Moog software products have actually been, it's not just sort of like a stick a Moog name on something. I know Geert Beaven I don't know if he worked on this, but he's worked on a lot of previous products. The Moogafogers are very well thought of. So this is probably good. It's just a bit of a head shift, isn't it? Thinking in terms of perhaps what it means in terms of Moogness. Would you agree? I know, Robbie. Let's go to you first.
No, it's a very Moog thing. It looks and sounds Moogy, and yeah, I mean, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, here we go, one trick pony. It's going to be a bass synth, and am I not already over bought in that department? But no, I mean, when I actually watched the demo, there's a guy called Brian Oliva who's got a channel on YouTube called Gethsemane Music, and he bought it straight away and just basically went through all the presets. That's the video I watched rather than the very fancy marketing one, and you just get a feel of of what it's capable of. It has a lot of bass. It's very good for bass. So, but I actually liked the patches that weren't bass oriented patches. There are some in there that are paddy sounds and leady sounds, and so it's not just a one trick pony. And say for what is it, $49 at the moment, you get a lot.
Yeah, 49 from 99. Yeah, it's not bad at all. Is it? I haven't tried it. I'm assuming it's it's capable of polyphony, but
and it's MPE as well. It's got MPE.
Oh,
so that's interesting.
Yeah, so quite a shift. I mean, I guess we didn't see that coming, did we? We were all expecting sort of the connection with in music to just sort of bring out a load of toys with Moog's names on them. But this must have been these things don't just turn up in a matter of weeks. I mean, I expect it was in the production schedule for several months or if not years before what am I trying to say? They acquired it.
Yeah,
acquisition.
No, that's the word. Nice about this. I tell you what is nice about this is, and Robin pointed this out to me the other day, that you can connect up your Moogafoga plugins internally, so you can route this through the Moogafogers through like Moog's own kind of custom rewire system, if you will. So you can modulate your Mariana with your Moogafogers and all sorts of, and I haven't tried it yet, but it looked that was quite a lot of fun. So
that sounds interesting. I was just trying to say, Ian J. Cole said in the chat room that actually it's $15 for iPad, so you can buy a separate thing. I'm just trying to throw this up. It should actually.
I wonder if you buy the iPad version, it should work on Mac OS, shouldn't it? On the current versions of Mac OS. I know, like all their other Moog plugins do.
That should work. I'm just trying to find.
It probably won't work as a plugin because they probably haven't done a wrapper for it like they did with the others. So with the Model 15 and the Mini.
There we go. I finally got the sticker up.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, it'll be interesting.
Sounds like somebody's changing their Wellingtons somewhere in the background there. I don't know whether that was going. I wasn't paying attention.
Sorry, my dog going mad.
Oh, is it? It's all right. Oh, that's all right. I don't want them to be distressed. Paulee, interesting. I mean, Moog, obviously.
Yes.
I don't know. I think we've had this discussion before. I mean, I'm not sure if you've got any Moog hardware. I mean, I didn't own any Moog hardware until the Sub 37. And I confess I don't use it that much, but certainly if I'm going to play live, I would, because it's a brilliantly designed piece of hardware. This is obviously a very different beast and not designed to be play live. It's a piece of software. But
I was half asleep because I'm half asleep all of the time these days.
Yeah, well, I understand that.
So I was in my days and I was looking at Robin's great article that he wrote.
That's on Gear News,
I sent him a message saying, you're such a brilliant writer, and he was like, oh shucks. But I thought it was hardware initially, just for 3 or 4 minutes as I read down, and I was like, this is great, this is. this is it's a little more complex than, say, the small little synths that they've been doing.
Yeah, I'm trying.
It's
more like the Minotaur,
the one based on the Taurus, the Minotaur,
Yeah.
and the Sirin and
Mavis.
stuff like that. Mavis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
essentially, I was like, "Oh, this looks pretty cool," and then I was like, "Oh, it's software. Okay, interesting." But I've got to say, from the sounds I've heard, it really does have that low end presence, doesn't it?
Yeah, from what I've gathered.
You could put it in your track. Obviously, I haven't used it, but a lot of the Moog stuff. Sorry, we have to say Moog now, don't we? We're not allowed to say Moog anymore. I spent the entire '90s saying Moog, and it's been
My entire
as a
life.
British person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's hard to switch that over. But yeah, I think I might nab the iPad version just for playing around. Because there's nothing better than, just to have an iPad synth when you are noodling around, when you've got a couple of hours to kill or something like that, It's really, really good. But yeah, I too was quite excited with the inter-plugin modulation. So for instance, using some of the Mogafogas plugins, LFOs and things like that to modulate parameters in this. I kept on saying marinara, like the
Marinara,
sauce /
like the pizza.
Yeah, Moog Marinara.
Might be a different product, but could be equally as good.
It'd be like a mini Moog shaped pizza with a nice tomato sauce, just
What
to
a
like
great
a
idea.
mummy used to make. But yeah, it's
hungry
cool. That's all I've got to say.
It's interesting, Matt, isn't it? I mean, actually, one of the first things that's come up in the chat, Enrico Palazzo said, I would love to see a proper hardware version of the Mariana, which kind of, maybe that can happen now because we've got new owners and this might be a testing ground, right?
Yeah, I was wondering about that, why it is software only, and maybe that's a price point thing. Maybe that's something they want to test with the market, and before they do, it's a hardware. But when I first saw this, I thought this seems very similar to the Minotaur, which I bought when it first came out, and I loved that. Basically, I've spent my whole life in search of the ultimate bass sounds. But, basically all my music is just like super low end as much as possible. And my go-tos are things like the 4MS Ensemble oscillator, which he's just got this beautiful low end, and the Schweiman stuff, the VCO6 is really good for that. So I've got to try this out. If anything, this seems to be kind of focused on low end and bass. I understand it does other things as well. But I've certainly got to try this out. And for 49 quid, but I would love a hardware version for sure. And, in fact, Robbie, Paulee, what's your kind of go-to super low end bass synths at the minute? What are you using?
Hardware
I'd
or
love to know.
software?
Good
Hardware or
question.
software,
Really
whichever.
Hardware or software?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Surprisingly, the Polybrute.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
it's a polysynth.
Yeah.
But my goodness,
Yeah.
especially because you can use the high pass filter. You can run the filters in parallels or series, so you can run in parallel and just put a little bit through the high pass filter down low with that low end frequency accentuated with a bit of resonance. And I've got to say, it's really, really lovely. But the other one that is my kind of go-to all these years later is still the Nord modular. Essentially
good shout.
because, you can have as many sub oscillators as you want, essentially, and also as and EQs built into the patch, and EQs that could move dynamically with envelopes through the patch. So if you just want the fundamental on the very end of say you want a very plucky attack and then the fundamental to come in later, kind of like sometimes you use side chaining to get different bass throbs, you can kind of do it with that on the Nord modular. So yeah, I like those two, and that's the reason they're always plugged in. Those two, you know,
Right,
other
that makes
synths
sense.
might come and go on the mixer, but those are forever essentially.
Robbie, have
What
you
about
had
you,
time
Robbie?
to
What's yours?
ruminate?
I would say, I think out of all the hardware that I've got, the Core Prophecy does some amazing bass sounds. It can do that whole Moog thing, but it can also do that really sort of deep and creamy, sort of almost sub bass that's still got, you know, it's not too sub, but it's low enough. I always, there's a patch on there, I think it's called Club Bass. And there's another one, I can't remember the name of it. It's gorgeous. And I used it on so many things back in the day for bass. I can't say any of the DXs do. Well, of course, you've got solid
Well,
bass.
they've got decent low end,
Yeah.
but you know,
You've got things like solid bass on the DX11, or lately bass on the 11, which is a hybrid, which is very nice. I think that's probably, and like Paulie says, the Polybrute is kind of a beautiful
Monster.
thing in all. Yeah, so
Interesting.
Yeah, but
I'm
I'll
trying to
go
think.
for the
I'm trying
Prophecy.
to think. In recent times, I recall the last review I did where we all went, bloody hell, listen to the low end on that, was the Norand Mono Mark II. The oscillators in that, because it's a really interesting synthesizer because it's got the oscillators are actually analog circuitry. The rest of it, and so is the filter, but the rest of it is FPGA. But the oscillators themselves, I spoke to Matteo, and he was Matthew, and he was saying that on paper the oscillators are terrible. You know, I mean they're terrible specifications. They're very hard to tune, all of this stuff. But what he's mastered is this sort of incredibly complex scaling routine, which kind of fixes that. But what you get in return is this ridiculously low end. But when you combine it with the drive in it, is lovely from the point of view of. It can go from none to too much, but often with synths like that, there's something suffers in the dynamic range or the noise floor, but not so on this one. It's just, I have to say, it's got an incredible low end, really impressive. But it's not something that everyone. I mean, it's not a cheap thing. I think it's about £600 or £700. Is that that's your Polybrute doing its thing? Yep. It feels like I'm in the room. There's definitely some shake.
More drive.
And it's got a higher fundamental as well, which is interesting.
I've got the filters in series, so
Are you dropping a high harmonic on the high pass, a low harmonic? So
I am,
giving it
'cause
that cool.
I'm sneaky like that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like to do that too.
That's important, isn't it? I think, and with this Moog plugin, it's got two parts to it as well. And as we all probably know, you know, when you're creating really juicy bass sounds, it's useful to layer them in that way. So one's kind of doing a solid low end, and then you can mess around with like what Paulee's doing there, and sort of add them together. I think that's really important. But then there's things like sync as well on the low end. I think can be quite important.
Yes, sync.
Sometimes. Yeah, the oscillate sync.
yeah,
Otherwise,
it does.
just to remove any of that really low end sort of phasing issues that you might get. And rightly or wrongly, most of my bass on my tracks are all stereo. I don't know. I just love stereo bass with slightly deep.
But your vinyl mastering engineer sacked you and won't touch your material anymore because you've ruined so many cutting heads.
The one release that I had on vinyl, which went out on Fat Cat Records, they had to mono the bass on it, of course, and it sounds great. It does sound great, but compared to a digital version, it can be night and day. I think because you just need that. I just love stereo bass on it, and I know there's a million people out there who probably say they should always be mono. Probably right, But,
Well, that is old school. It's not. I wouldn't say it's right. It's old school and the reason. I mean, for those who perhaps don't know, back in the day when you took your thing into the cutting engineer, they have to protect. You've got to make sure that the head is not moving around too much, because what can happen is you can break the cutting lathe by having too much low frequency movement. So you would mono the base more from the protection of being able to actually cut it into vinyl, because also having that much stuff, when the needle's trying to follow stereo bass, it's going to jump out of the groove because you've got this low frequency oscillation essentially. So nowadays that doesn't matter, so you can be a bit more free with it. But it's an interesting thing. It was never sonically, it was a mechanical reason that was the case, and quite possibly it might have caused problems with FM radio. I don't know, I'm making a guess there. Early FM stuff might have been an issue because of the intermodulation, but that is a complete guess. I have no technical knowledge to back that up whatsoever. Okay, let's have a quick word from our friends over at let's just have a quick word from our friends over at iZotope. Got a new ad. This sales season, take a look at the iZotope Creative Mix Bundle. With Vocal Synth, Stutter Edit 2, Neoverb and Neutron 4 elements, your mix will never sound so good. Let your sound palette shine with these mixing and creative effects. The Creative Mix Bundle is yours for $49, saving an astonishing $497. So head over to iZotope.com and save big. Yes, indeed. And if you go over to iZotope.com/Sonictalk, there's a coupon code you can use there that applies to some deals, not all. Anyway, we thank them very much for their continued sponsorship of the show. Sorry, did I cut anybody off there? I didn't mean to. I was just, Matt, you were talking.
One thing on that, Nick, on the Moog thing. Do you have to buy them all separately? So do you have to buy the iPad version and you've got to buy the OS X version? Or do you just buy one license and it covers them all? I'm presuming it's...
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think... But Ian in the chat said that the iPad version, because if you bought the iPad versions of Animoog Model 15 and the Mini, and you're running a current version of Mac OS, I think from Big Sur onwards, you could actually run those natively in the Mac OS, and they also provided a wrapper so you could use them as plugins. However, this one, according to Ian, it isn't, and I guess that's because they're providing it as a plugin as well as an iPad thing.
It's interesting. It's a developer choice. When you upload an app to the App Store, you've got it's literally a checkbox. Do you want this to be able to run in universal mode on the M1 processors? And you can switch that on or off. And I can understand that for some marketing or product purposes that makes sense. But obviously Moog have done that in the past. But maybe they're being a bit more. Maybe that's one of the reasons that they had to sell the company, because of just for that one little checkbox. Now that new strategy will completely turn the company around and everything will be marvellous. But I doubt it. But they're obviously just tightening things up a bit, which is fair enough. Right, mergers and acquisitions. Just a quick one on this one. This is the Røde acquires Mackie, which is quite big news. I mean, Røde are in many ways they're quite similar to. They're quite similar to Mackie, I would say, in that they kind of got fairly innovative and affordable products. I mean, a lot of us use their mics, particularly for videographing, and there's all sorts of other stuff that they make as well. And Mackie, of course, it's kind of weird. There was an article on Gear News which I was reading, and it reminded me of a point which was ultimately name a Mackie product in the last 10 years, and that's a tough. That's been released in the last 10 years. Still, the Mackie SR sound systems, you see them everywhere. We use them for our EMOM, actually, for the left and right stacks. And I think it was worth $180 million. I don't know if that's US or Australian, which would make a big difference. But Mackie's, I had a Mackie 8 bus. That was the one you had. The Mackie 8 bus was the mixer you had. If you were doing remixes, you had loads of channels for your inputs. There was something about the mic counts when you drove them, but the EQ was absolutely disgusting. It used to do weird things to the phase, so you almost couldn't use the EQ. You could use the top and the bottom, but don't touch the mids, because the mids would ruin the phase on the stuff. But I mean, their stuff was everywhere, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know, Matt, you probably had Mackie stuff back in the day. I've still got a VLZ here, and we've had it for years. It's like a tank.
Yeah, man. You've got to admit those are built like a tank, and the amount of times I've spilt a drink on it, and they still work. And you see them everywhere, don't you? You still see them everywhere. But don't forget Mackie, and this is a really interesting acquisition. Not because the first thing I think that comes to mind when you think of Mackie is those desks. Fair enough. Yeah. But I had to jump on their website earlier because just like you was saying then, Nick, name a product they've launched in the past 10 years. But actually they have been busy. They've been doing this. They've been doing the kind of podcasting stuff. They've got the studio monitors that they do, of course. And audio interfaces. So they have kind of been busy, but yeah, it's a strange one, and I'd hate to see this brand go away because I think they've got some great legacy products, and I wonder if this acquisition by Røde, microphones. The only thing that Mackie don't do, as far as I can see, is they do microphones. They do have some microphones, so they have some microphones as well. I was going to say this would probably make sense in that way, but it also makes me think: why would Mackie want to sell? Is it because it's just time for them and the owners want to move on, retire? I don't know. Is it because Røde's got some really interesting plans about what they can do with these products? And
I would imagine,
and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm interested to see where this one goes. I don't really have much to say on it, but it's interesting as well because Røde's obviously have not been around as long as Mackie, have they? And in fact, I've still got my NT2, which I bought when I was at university. It's probably the only vocal mic that I have, and I love that. So it's interesting seeing such a company with such huge legacy be acquired by something that's still a relatively new company, if you like.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I think their mics, they're affordable mics. They were first to market with that. I mean, I could see you've got a Røde branded, and I think we've got a Røde branded mic arm as well. I mean, that's one that they kind of do. They're getting into kind of broadcast and videography, and that's a sort of crossover, but maybe not so much into the pro audio thing. So, maybe this just gives them a whole new set of categories that they can, build products into, I suppose.
They say Røde have been moving into doing stuff for podcasters, building mixers specifically for those purposes, and providing mic stands and microphones and all that kind of stuff. When I saw this emerge the other day, I mean, I'm not really that well versed in mixers and microphones. That's not my bag. But like you say, Mackie has been a brand that's been around and synonymous with good quality mixing desks for many and many years, but then I haven't really heard of them, like you said, for the last sort of 5 or 10 years. They've not been making any ripples. They've probably just been getting on with doing what they're doing. And this is what I like about this acquisition is that it's a company of similar standards and technologies. As David Brent might say, it's good synergy. It's good synergy. So the fact that these two have come together, I'd rather that than this, than Mackie be taken over by some venture capitalist type organisation.
Yes.
At least these people
100%.
have got things in common. They can now work together and they can expand each other's product ranges. And at the end of the day, fingers crossed, the consumer comes out best on this one. So that's what I'm taking from this. It's good for the industry, I think.
Absolutely. And Paulie, we can't forget actually that they were pretty much the instigators of the notion of a control surface. The Mackie Huey and the Mackie Control were kind of their innovations, weren't they? And we still use them. I mean, most controllers have a Huey mode.
Yeah. So my in around 1998 to 2000, when I was roughly 16 to 18 in age, I was at college doing performing arts, and I was in a number of different education facilities over the years, like colleges, universities, etc. It seemed that for a period of time that Mackie was everywhere, whether it be mixers or power amps or powered monitors as well.
Yeah,
they
definitely.
did
MR8s,
powered
definitely.
monitors. But yeah, that's it. But your little quip about the EQ just sparked a memory in my mind, because and maybe the reason I use Yamaha desks and Yamaha mixers to this day is because when I got to university, the guy in the studio, the main engineer, hated Mackie desks, specifically
really?
for the EQ. And he said,
Right.
his famous quote was, for every problem the EQ solves on a Mackie desk, you get 2 more problems. So it kind of doubles the issues you've got. So I personally never noticed any issues. But maybe that's what swayed me in my mind. You know, he used like all Yamaha stuff and things like that. You know, like the O1V, a classic.
Yeah, I had one of those.
And I've stuck with Yamaha to this day, possibly because I was worried that I'd be causing more problems than
Okay.
than I was solving.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's
That's
weird.
interesting. I mean,
Yeah, I got
they
put
paid
off them,
180
but of
million.
course-
Sorry, go for it.
I'd of course try the new products, no problem at all, because maybe the issue was just with one specific desk that this guy used once. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes, and that's an interesting point, you can have one experience with a brand and it's bad, and then you'll never go near that brand again. Do you know what I mean? It's really, really.
I mean,
it's really
to be fair,
difficult sometimes.
I bought the 8 bus with the expander because we needed the inputs. We used to have a Studio Master, which was a chunky old thing, but it sounded lovely. And when I got the Mackie, because I needed all that extra input, because you had inline input, so you have tape returns and easy. And I could never use it because the EQ, if you had a stereo pair coming in, EQ on it, it messed with the stereo imaging. And I'm quite sensitive to phase. And I had one for several years, and I ended up getting rid of it. And as Nick Howes actually pointed out, the Yamaha O series blew the Mackies away, and that's exactly it. Because I bought an 01, whatever the very the very first one. I can't remember what it was, 01D or whatever it was, because
01V
it was
maybe?
the first. 01V, yeah, it might have been even before that, because it was the first one that didn't have that, so I could get rid of the Mackie, and it also had total recall, and I think that's true. I think Mackie sort of lost ground to lots of other things that came along. They were doing what they do, and maybe that's the case, because don't forget Presonus, Behringer, and they all started making things like active speakers and whatever control surfaces and all that, and it just ate into their market share, because that used to be the only place you could go. Because Mackie initially, I mean, I think Alesis were first with the surface mounts. They made that weird little sort of plastic carbon mixer, which was ridiculously cheap for what mixers used to cost. They used to cost thousands, and then Mackie, Alesis brought this one out, and then Mackie brought these other ones out, which up to then, surface mount technology was considered a dirty word, and Mackie figured out how to make it work at scale, and those mixers just ended up being everywhere because you got so many channels for your money, and that's why. But 180 million quid or dollars or whatever it may be, it's a significant chunk. So it's a pretty big. It's going to make a pretty big megacorp, I'd imagine. And I don't feel that's bad, because as you've said, it feels like 2 benign forces rather than an aggressive force and a weaker force. You know what I mean? I think
An
that's
evil
what I was trying to say.
conglomerate.
Yes, exactly. A
Actually,
benign conglomerate. Yep.
I looked up what I first learnt to mix on, and it was a Yamaha AW4416. Do you remember those?
That was an analog
had
one,
an
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but it also had a hard disk recorder in, and some effects. So that was pretty cool at the time, and a big screen. So yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Like that
Yamaha's.
very much.
I just looked at the Yamaha DM3. I mean, they are lovely mixers, and they finally figured out how to make them easy to use, because the early ones were a menu-driven nightmare. But that was just back when those things weren't all that advanced, and we didn't have big screens. But interesting. Okay, gosh, I should probably have a spin in the ad from our friends over at Native Instruments, which is also a new ad at this point. Put your hands on some premium keys from Native Instruments and save up to 66% on a world-class production suite with Complete 14. Pick up a brand new keyboard loaded with all the sounds you could ever need. It's a match made in production heaven. Cyber Seasons deals, save for a limited time only at nativeinstruments.com. Indeed you can. And again, Sonic 10 is a code you can use on the Native Instruments site as well for certain software bundles. I don't think you could do it for hardware, but yeah, nice. Okay, right. Let's see. Gosh, there's more, isn't there? I'm just wondering where to go next. I think maybe we'll do the Sonic Couture ACDR drum machine, because I really liked the approach to this. Let's just run that. So this is the new drum machine software, but what they've done is they've used round robin sampling, they've used those polyend perk solenoid drum triggers for kind of repeatability, which is a great idea. But also you've got, if you see in the middle there, each layer of each voice has this granular control of each sample, and I think there's up to 10 round robin samples per layer per drum, stochastic sampler, a stochastic sequencer and a beat sequencer. And there's something about the sound of this. I know they have specialised in those kind of electronic drum machines that are then recorded through massive PAs and resampled, which I think we looked at, which was a great idea. And this one just looks like a really interesting sample set. And I don't know, because there's also quite a lot of synthesis capabilities. I don't know what people use for drum samples. I know, Matt, you probably use... you're using mostly stuff you make, but you've probably got sample playback stuff, trigger samples, whatever. Is that something that would appeal to you? You're muted. Matt, I think your mic is switched off. Hello? Oh, it's run out of juice. Okay, we'll go to Robbie for a sec. Robbie,
Yes.
I know this looks good. Sonic Couture, I mean, they kind of set, I mean, I think, as with many companies, you know, it's quite hard to sort of stand above the parapet with this kind of thing. But this actually, I like their approach to it, and it looks kind of good. I think it's normally 139 quid, so it's about 97.30. So it's not the cheapest of sample, but it's 2.9 gigs of sample of drum samples. That's a lot of samples.
Exactly, and when I first saw this on the list, I thought, oh, here we go, another software drum machine, another sample set. And actually, it's not, because like all really good drum libraries, they are using round robins, which gives you that more natural sound. It's not like a machine gun. I really like the sound of this. Not so sure whether I'd like, because it's a contact library. I'm not a massive contact fan. But there is a lot of tweakability, and the fact that you can, they've done it with drum machine samples as well as acoustic drum samples. So they were messing around with an 808 in there, and they were getting some really nuanced stuff out of it, which you would not normally get from most. Certainly some, but not most drum sample libraries. But the fact that they've used the robot arm to be able to get repeatable levels of velocity, and then was it a dozen round robins per instrument? That's really good, because then you get a little bit of life to it, a little bit of humanity, which is nice. And when you mix that up with machines that don't normally give you that, you get a very nice kind of unique sound. So I really like the sound of this. Wish it was a little bit cheaper though.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. There's quite a lot of stuff. I think Matt's just. Are you there, Matt? You've charged up. Yes,
I'm on charge.
Excellent. I can see there's a red light.
It's the beauty of wireless microphones. Always have one plugged in. I was going to say, there's a lot of these drum machines, to be fair, on the market, and I think it's fair to say that when we're looking at new ones and acquiring new ones, you're going to want something that now comes with all the added stuff, and whether that's a sequencer, and this one's got that kind of, is it Euclidean kind of, it's 8 Euclidean track sequencing.
It's Euclidean, so I said stochastic, but it's Euclidean, yes.
Stochastic, right. Euclidean, effects, you've got the transient shaping, the compression, the EQ, you want all of that, don't you? Really in there, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, not at all. But for me, I've always found the most exciting things when creating drum samples is through my own exploration of plugging in drum machines and running them through distortion and compression and combining together. Off camera, you can't see, but I've got the Pulsar 23 and the Perquons, and those in combination.
Oh God, I
running them
bet.
through different compression and EQ and distortion and combining to get together just to create those sounds is brilliant. And of course, I've got the onboard sequencers, and which you can take advantage of. But in terms of software, I mean, again, this is just for me in my music. I'm not that interested in things like crash cymbals. I don't think I ever use crash cymbals. I probably use a kick. I don't ever use snares even. I use kick drums and hi-hats. If I'm lucky, I'll use a hi-hat, and that's it. You know, I certainly don't use tambourines or anything like that. So I'd always like, if I was buying something like this, I'd like to have the ability to have, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 voices. I would opt to have 7 kick drums that I could combine together and EQ and compress and distort and just add them together in interesting ways. And give me that. Give me like the kick drum machine that I can do that. There's probably ones out there that do that. Maybe even this one allows you to pull out the tambourine and swap it for a kick drum.
I wonder if I'm not sure if you can. It may be possible to do that, to set it up however you wish. I'm not so sure, but maybe it will. But yeah, that's a good point.
Cool, though.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think there's this real. What's really interesting to me about it is it's the quality of those acoustic sounds, but played by a machine is really different, and it sort of sparks the ear. You just think, oh, that's different. I don't know whether you found the same. And also, like I say, there's a lot of the electric sounds. They have the way that they've changed the tonal balance. So you've got certain hi-hat tones that you can tighten up, you can bring them down. They've also got 2 Rockfield echo rooms as effect sends that you can send to, which might well be something you particularly
that's
want.
pretty cool, isn't it? And were they actually recorded? The ambiances were recorded, were they, as WAV?
Rockfield, I believe so.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, with drums, I kind of separate out because I am a drummer technically, although I haven't drummed in about 10 years, but I really should do that because it's great anger management therapy. Drumming.
Well, that can be, yeah.
But yeah, this product got me grooving. That's all I can say, really.
Right, okay, interesting.
I listened to it, especially that first pattern. It kind of reminded me a bit of that song Over and Over by Hot Chip, which was really cool.
Yeah.
That kind of almost disco beat with some percussion on top. But yeah, for acoustic drums, I tend to either play them in. I've got like a couple of drum controller pads, not like a big kit or anything, or I will just do them in the piano roll. And I use stuff like BFD, like still the really old version of BFD.
Yeah, no, that's a
it's
big
got all the
favourite,
microphones. Yeah. But yeah, then and a lot of my music does feature acoustic drums. Blended with electronic elements, and then for the electronic elements, I like to synthesize a lot of weird drum sounds, including in Eurorack as well. And I've been looking at loads of modular drum modules at the moment because I'm building a new rack, a new Pac-Man themed rack. So this is one that I've emailed the makers in Australia. It's by Beast Tech, and it's called the Pixel Drum, and it's got some weird 8-bit drum algorithms that sound like broken Atari games. So I'm like, yep, I'll have that. So yeah, I like to layer those kind of broken video game sounds with acoustic drums essentially most of the time.
Yeah.
All right.
Matt,
do you mind if I just quickly jump in on that? Because one thing that just came to mind there is in the new update of Logic, you've got the drummer in there. You can now put Easy Drummer or your favorite drum plugin on the drummer track, can't you, in Logic? and take advantage of all the nuances that it kicks out, but it will be triggering Easy Drummer instead of their built-in drummer. Apologies if you've already spoken about this on the show. But
interesting.
I think that's really interesting because I quite like. When I do produce for other bands, and when I've had to use Logic's drummer, I will use that one. I use BFD as well. But now I've got the ability of putting BFD essentially on that Logic drummer and taking advantage of all that kind of nuance that it can kick out and recording that. And am I right in thinking you can also extrapolate the MIDI data from it now as well? I think. But
I don't know. Possibly. It's funny. I mean, I used to spend my entire working day inside Logic, and I haven't used it for such a long time now. I mean, but that's not the stuff I'm doing anymore, really. So it kind of makes sense. Okay, well, interesting. It looks like it's well worth checking out, and I know, I like the look of that, and I think I will probably. I don't know. I think I shy away because the big problem I have is because I'm working with laptops. I don't want to fill my laptop's hard drive up with samples. I mean, if I was doing music on it the whole time, I probably would. But it just feels like.
Well, that's.
I think sample management still kind of. I'm still scarred by when it wasn't. So I kind of. I've just. I tend not to work in that world so much. Okay, well, let's have a look. What's the time? 10:02. What do we want to do? Do we want to look at? We've got 3 possible topics. Do we want to look at failing creative partnerships? That could be quite a rich tapestry of a rich seam of sounds. This is really I'll do it. This is really interesting. This sort of came in. I'm trying to remember who, but I think Mark Tinley sent this in. Actually, all the best to Mark and Gina, by the way. I think this was If I press that button, it'll probably show me something. Creative partnerships. Yeah, this is. It's like a TMZ sort of gossip column type thing. And this is they've got to the point now, Hall & Oates, where they're effectively sort of pinging restraining orders on each other so they can't turn up at each other's concerts or who can sing certain songs. I mean, it's awful. I mean, it sort of sounds funny, but I mean, these guys are Daryl Hall and John Oates are responsible for, if you're of a certain age and the charts meant something to you, they were all over it, and they wrote some absolute classics. And some real they wrote some absolute classics, and it's kind of sad that it's got to this. But this happens. We've seen it before. The kind of stories of bands having to have separate tour buses for different members because they fall out. But creative partnerships are weird in that way. I mean, it's often mostly not an emotional or certainly not a sort of sexual relationship, but it has that the same intensity as you would have with a life partner or whatever. And yet, we end up with these awful situations. But and I suppose the thing is that I've been in the same situation. People you work with, and you just think you can't do it anymore. And it's. I think the trick is probably recognising when it's over and when you get out. But when you have a shared ownership of a massively worth a back catalogue, it does make it all a bit more bitter. I mean, the New Order. There's just so much of this stuff where there's issues. I don't know, Matt. Have you ever been in a band and had a sort of terrible split and have to deal with it? I mean, fortunately, none of us are having to deal with. We didn't write any Christmas hits or anything, so it's not like we're having to split the royalties or anything. But it is emotionally quite distressing, isn't it? Even after all these years.
I played in bands, and I'm very fond of thinking back of those times where I was able to share making music with other people. There's something really beautiful about that. But I must admit, I enjoy the fact that when I'm making my own music, it's completely me. It's completely indulgent. My ego grows and I just do whatever I want, and everything that I say goes, basically, including the stereo bass. So I'm all right for that. Having said that, I have been thinking about working with some people recently on some particular projects. But I think these things can happen, and it's sad to read this because for the fact that I make, really brutal, distorted techno, I listen to a lot of 80s music, and I listen to these guys. They're cool. I love their production. I love their minimal production and the drum machines they use. It's just kind of drum machine, vocals, and a bit of bass. And I'm like, they sound great. And you never know really what's going on the inside. And it's the same with like New Order and Hooky and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a big Joy Division fan, and knowing that those guys are not really talking, it kind of breaks my heart in a way, and it is upsetting. And I suppose when there's millions of pounds involved, and you've got lawyers involved, there's a whole other level there that can just take off. And it does make me think, though. I mean, if for a minute you could take all that money away from Hall and Oates and say, right, you've got the option of getting on with each other and just forgetting all this quarrelling, or you've got to go work in McDonald's for the rest of your life. I'm pretty sure they'd sit down and go, you know what? Yeah, they just need a reality check. I think sometimes a reality check of how privileged they are through their hard work. I'm not saying that this comes easy, what they've been able to achieve, but how privileged they are to be able to stand there and have such a great track record and abundance of money, and that lifestyle that goes with it. So give them an ultimatum. Just figure it out, lads. Have a little fight if that's what's needed. Have a penalty.
Well, they're in their 70s now. It might be a bit unpleasant.
All right, a tickling match then. Let's do that. So have a tickling match and get
first one to let a little bit go, right?
Yeah, maybe they just need to go down the pub and have a few pints, have a little fight, get a kebab, and sort it out.
That's funny. There is a Pendle Stevens says, General, who hasn't here played in a band, which I suppose is a question. I'm sure, Robbie, you must have done, and it can be very, and it's not just in any creative form. There's a certain amount that you invest as an individual. There's a level of trust, isn't there, that is quite similar to what you would give to an emotional partner as well. So you kind of, it's quite hard to disentangle, I think.
Yeah, I was in a number of bands through the 80s and into the early 90s, and it just got to a point where when you're doing something really, really good and you're all having fun, it's fantastic, and you can't wait. And it's very much like an emotional romantic relationship. Those first few months of you just can't wait to be in the same room with each other and do this stuff because it makes you happy. And then as you get to know the individuals, you start to understand their personal personality traits, characteristics, and maybe some of those things that niggle you. And sometimes you can get over that, and other times you can't. And of course there's always egos, because most of us that joined the band do it because we love playing music, but also we love playing music in front of people and showing off, essentially. And I got to a point with the last band I ever played in. They did the dirty on me, and I just said, no, I'm not having this anymore. And I wanted, like Matt said, just wanted to be 100% in control of what I was doing. And I was quite happy to do that. Although saying that, I do hanker after going back and playing with a bunch of people again. That would be nice. But with regards to Hall and Oates, I mean, it's a huge shame, because what a partnership they've had over the years. And now it's all petty. They've got all the lawyers involved, and they're both sat in their lovely houses whilst the lawyers make a whole bunch of money arguing about who's going to make money from the stuff that they worked on however many years ago. And it's a real shame. But then you look at other duos or other bands, and they stand the test of time. And why is that? Is that because they are just so well suited, or do they do the sensible thing and take time off from each other, or allow themselves to grow individually, as well as then come back a few years later? There's a lot of successful acts that do that. So yeah, it's a shame, but I think a lot of this is probably down to lawyers. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting. I think perhaps it all goes wrong when you're on tour with people, because then you're living with them essentially, and it's living with people in a pressured and quite often boring scenario where you're just sitting around doing nothing. And some people drink, some people don't drink, some people like to tap the table incessantly, some people, whatever it may be, and that can really start to wind people up, I think.
Definitely. So I've played in bands for years and years and years, and the interesting thing is, because as I mentioned on my video, because my development of developing certain social skills was so slow, I essentially just treated other musicians as instruments, not being nasty or not kind of appreciating them, but being like, okay, you play this bit, you play this bit, you play this bit, you play this bit. And some people were fine with that in bands I was in. Some people really weren't fine with that, you know, just playing what they were told to. But it kind of, in my last band, which is currently on hiatus while I work through this breakdown, that's like a half joke. It worked because they kind of understood that I'm a bit of a control freak and just kind of go with it, and they'll chuck the occasional thing in here and there. And it just worked. It just worked that way. But I can definitely see how the pressures of doing gigs, you know, all the time, can tear people apart. And it's also all of the bad stuff of being famous, isn't it? People recognizing you for the wrong reasons, or people thinking, you know, oh, you're washed up has-beens or stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess.
That, I know that Daryl Hall's done his live show, Daryl's Bar, for like years and years.
Live at Daryl's house, yeah, Daryl's house.
And it's amazing. And he plays lots of the old Hall & Oates stuff with various people, you know. He'll get ZZ Top in, or other kind of rock or pop singers, and they'll do, you know, some of their back catalogue. And all the musicians are top notch, and it's really, really cool. So I'll have to read into this, because they both seem like really pretty chill guys, to be honest.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It is hard to know what. It is sad. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean,
they've just fallen out of touch. But
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I was waiting for a Hall & Oates song title reference somewhere. I couldn't think of any, and so I'm glad that somebody did it. I think what's interesting also is, you know, you've got to bear in mind that quite often, you know, a band situation that it shifts. So you might have the songwriter or someone who instigates the songs. It might only be one person, or it might be two people. One of the person's songs are more successful than the others. That's going to lead to a sort of weird inequity, unless you can kind of work it out. Or, you know, when you're actually on tour, the power shifts. You know, it's like, well, I wrote all these songs, and it says, yeah, but I'm the lead guitarist and I put on most of the show. The pressure is on me visually, or to project.
The pressure's on my leather pants to be tight.
Yes, exactly. So there's so many things that shift around, and I guess it's like any partnership. It's about recognizing it and being understanding. But often we're not prepared to kind of say, okay, you do this, and this is really, really important. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe that's what people do, or maybe it's just understood. But it's hard. I mean, working with people is hard at the best of times, let alone in a creative situation, I suppose.
You know what? Me pre-therapy and me post-therapy are completely different people, essentially, when it comes to this. And I think now that in a creative kind of partnership, I'd be a lot more chilled and be like, yeah, that's cool, rather than having to control every single aspect of it. So I think, you know, I'm gonna you know, try and do more collaborations and stuff like that. I did that one with Brian, the Golu Boy track, which was on an old Russian synth called the Alita, which is on the Magical Synth Adventure channel. And we don't hate one another yet, so there's a positive result. But yeah, I also want to say, guys, Robbie, Matt, I'm up for collabing anytime. I'll chuck a bit of, you know, angsty vocals on top. Your
musical skills are a bit too terrifying, Paulie. That's the problem.
I think that's the thing. I'm a bit intimidated.
I'm very approachable.
I most of my songs are one note. You can play like many with these fingers. I just do this. So, but it's nice to know.
I enjoy timbre as well. I'm not just into harmony. That's the thing. Otherwise, I'd be on, you know, a jazz nerd podcast. So yeah, I really enjoy people who can create interesting timbres and things like that. And then, you know, if you just give me a root note, I'll do the weird chords on top, and it'll be fun. See what
Excellent.
happens.
Right, well,
I do
I think...
think-
sorry, Matt, go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I do think, just finishing on the band thing, I do think if you're in a band, it's got to be about the band, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you draw the line. All the egos have got to go to bed. It's got to be about the music. It's got to be about the success of the band and the song, and that's it. I think that's what it comes down to. I'm yet to watch all of Get Back, the Beatles documentary. I've saved it for Christmas.
Sure.
That's my Christmas viewing. And sit down and eat my body weight in chocolate and gravy and watch that.
Oh.
And but what I have seen of it is I was really struck by how open they were when they're making music together, and how vulnerable they enable themselves to be around each other, but by putting ideas forward and having ideas pushed back, and just to try things out and be able to be vulnerable. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of us musicians and music producers and creatives, we are a little bit, we don't like to put ourselves in a vulnerable place, to be honest. I think a lot of us shy away from too much confrontation if we can avoid it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's a very valid point. I think also, though, I mean, the art of any form, or working in any creative environment, even if you're just the engineer to the talent that's in the studio, you need to be able to understand the collaborative process and be prepared to chuck something in the ring and go, oh, what about this? If asked, obviously you don't want to impose your will on it, and not feel too disappointed when it doesn't happen. And that's one of the things, the skills that one learns as a musician is like, what about this?
Yes.
No, I'm not sure about that. And you go, okay, well, what about this then? Rather than going, oh no, I've been thinking about that as the only possible solution for my entire life, and now I've been knocked back.
I remembered one thing. Brian Eno said that sometimes, and I can only imagine the chaos this caused, sometimes if a guitar take wasn't working, he'd let the person who wasn't the guitarist in the band do the take if the person was better at guitar randomly, or could play that part better for the recording. He'd let not the guitarist play that part, and I'm like, whoa, that's gonna cause some ripples, isn't it? If you can, make decisions.
He is. I mean, from what I've heard about his approach to stuff, he is quite a manipulative chap. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. And then walk away and think, well, I've made the record, whatever.
There's always
not my problem if you can't tour it. Yeah,
there's always a role in the band for a mediator. And I think all the successful ones have someone in their midst. And the one thing, Matt, you'll see this when you watch Get Back, is that Ringo, apart from being one of the greatest drummers in the world, and I'll fight anyone that says he isn't, was the mediator in the band, and he didn't necessarily go in and sort of tactfully speak to certain people. It was just his presence and his demeanour and his personality, because he's a jovial chap, and he would diffuse situations and crack a little joke here or there. And you think about the likes of Fletch from Depeche Mode. We all know that Fletch is really not playing anything at all, but he was the glue that took the two, very conflicting personalities of Dave and Martin that have been known to clash quite frequently. And he would be in the middle there saying, well, boys, just calm it down. And I think if every band has got somebody in there that can do that, then they will probably last a little longer than most.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I mean, this whole subject, I think, is quite fascinating. We could probably dedicate an entire hour to it. Although I do have to knock things on the head, because I do have to... I'm going to go and see my local football team play the big match of the year, where they've actually sold all the tickets to the ground at Bath City, which has never happened. So there's 4,000 fans going to watch a sort of comedy pantomime. No, they're actually quite good, to be fair. So we'll see. So I'm quite excited, but I do have to go home and put on loads of warm layers, because it's going to be miserably freezing outside. Anyway, I think we'll probably wrap things up there. Thank you very much. Thanks to all the folks in the chat room and everything. I haven't seen Wagyu in there. I hope he's okay. I know he wasn't here last week. So all the best to you, mate, if you're not well. But if you're on holiday, then also all the best. Hope you're having a nice time. But let's go to our 4 up, and we'll say goodbye to everybody. anyway. So Matt, thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm hoping we'll see you again soon. You've got any YouTube action coming your way in the not too distant future, or is that something that you're?
I've got a lot to catch up on actually. Number of modules that I've got here that I've been playing around with for over a year, that I just absolutely love and deserve a little video of me using them. There's some distortion modules, there's a sequencer, there's the wave packets by Ozone as well. So it's going to be a lot of that once I've got things nailed down for next year. As I say, I'm working very much already in January with Stylophone and for NAMP and things like that. So once we've got all that put to bed and I can hibernate over Christmas a little bit, I'll be getting on that. So I'm hoping to do quite a lot of live streaming over Christmas. It's a real downtime period for me. So go over to my channel, hit the like and subscribe, and you'll get notified when I go live. I usually go live pretty randomly, so you'll get a notification in your emails when I go live. So, but hopefully I'll see you all before Christmas. Are we having a Christmas special, Nick? Is anything happening? Or we not talked about that
we
yet?
will have there is going to be will be more than one episode before Christmas, but when I sort of. It was so busy before Christmas. The thought of having to organise a Christmas quiz. I'm not going to do it this year. Maybe we'll do it next year because it is quite a lot of work. But we'll get together and raise a glass and do all of that stuff virtually for sure. But it'd be lovely, lovely to do that. But nice to see you, Matt.
Cool.
Also, Robbie, nice to see you too. I'm guessing you're working on podcast and stuff. Is it Friday? Your show?
Yeah, Friday, 7 p.m, ProSynth Network. I'm not on this week, yay, as many people say, but no, I'm off to see The Darkness, because it's my boy's 18th, and we always go and see them at Christmas, because they come, they're from round these parts, so we go and see them, but yeah, podcasts, thankfully I'm kind of done up until January time, so I'm just kind of taking a breather from that, but busy building lists of next year's potential guests, and also just doing a lot of prep work and writing. I've got to catch up with loads of gear news stuff, because this time of year you need to have lots of content in the back end ready to kind of go out over the festive season so you can put your feet up. And of course the fledgling business, which I started a couple of months ago, and just to make sure the tax man doesn't get me, so I'm just kind of getting on top of that and building my new Mac, and that's just kind of looking at my old, because I wanted to do a clean install rather than come up from a time machine, so I'm sort of like going from one, have I got that on there? No, install that, and then all the sample libraries and all that kind of stuff. So busy
right. Nice. And Paulee, I'm guessing
yes.
You'll have a kind of family Christmas, and then maybe some work. I don't know if you're working over Christmas the whole time, or whether you're going to chill, kick back, write some more music.
In sort of mental health world, my data center's open over the entire Christmas period, which is cool, because it means people who don't have anyone around can attend. But I'll probably be working on my sound mix more for Arcade Dreams, getting that done, because I can just take my laptop and all the video files and stuff. Obviously I've got the Amiga art contest coming up, and see if I'll win a prize for my new music video, the Vogue Grenade one on my Vogue Grenade channel. And then there was one other thing I was going to say. So I think on the 20th of December, I'm going to do a live stream of me and my friend Naddy doing some Christmas carols, because we've got to practice them for playing them. We're going to play loads of Christmas carols on piano, and she's going to sing and stuff to the service users in a Christmas party. So we'll live stream our rehearsal on the 20th, so it'll probably be sometime after Sonictalk, at 5 or 6 o'clock. All right. For an hour or two.
That sounds great. Nice one.
So that'll be really nice. That's something to look forward to, and other than that, it's onwards and upwards, isn't it? It's raising a child and trying to get some sleep.
All of that stuff. All of that stuff. Well, lovely to see you all. I should point out I've just recorded the one of the pieces for with Con Rasso, who is the head of Tuned Global, who kind of is behind a lot of the back end streaming infrastructure for various kind of music streaming services. It's quite an interesting interview. That's going to be going out between Christmas and New Year. And I've got another one with Jessica Powell of Audio Shake, who are deep into AI and audio processing. Just going to sort of discuss the tech and the where it's going and stuff. So that'll be another one. Those little two that will be out in between Christmas and New Year. But other than that, Sonic offices will be closed. Although I'm going a bit early with this because we've got another couple of shows before then. But that's it for this time. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. We will see you at the next show. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.